Hi everyone. Okay, I think I am live now, and I just dropped a comment in the chat. So if you're here, let me know, and I will see if I can refresh. It's trying to load my comments, so I'm kind of having a few issues. Just wanting to see if I can get everything up. Okay, it seems to be live on my end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see 2 viewers. I'm not sure if you can drop comments. Okay, here it goes. It's just very slow. All right. Hi, Kayla. Hi, Tammy. Welcome. So glad that you can join. So today is going to be an informational live, and this is about the rivers and the fields that are in the Greek underworld. And we're going to go through some information and then some ways that you can work with them. But just to start off, and also for anyone on the replay, do you know any of the rivers? Do you know any of the fields or pools or lakes? If you do, go ahead and drop the names of any that you may have heard of. Hi, Story. So question for anybody here now or anybody watching the replay. Do you know any of the names of rivers, fields, pools, or lakes in the underworld? And it's okay if you don't, but if you do know any, I'd love to hear what those are. So today we're really going to focus just on the rivers and the fields. There are quite a few lakes and pools and things too. I am not as familiar with those, but there are plenty around, and we'll just kind of focus on the main info today. Yeah, the Styx. I think that is the most popular one for sure. And Acheron, also another very popular one. It's great. So those two we'll definitely chat a little bit about today. And Leith, I should have looked up the pronunciation of that one. It might be Lethe, but yes, that one too. Hi, Angie. So glad you could make it. And M. Hello, hello. Okay, so the rivers in the underworld are bodies of water, and they're also gods. And they can also be called like daemons or demons as well, because they are lesser gods or lesser spirits in the Greek mythology. There's said to be 5 rivers and also many lakes and swamps that are associated. And it's interesting that in the Orphic literature, it actually says that there's only 4 rivers and that they're associated with the 4 directions. So a little bit of conflicting info if there's 5 or 4, but I think most tend to talk about the 5. So I'm going to read an excerpt from Plato, and this is in his book, Phaedo, Phaedo. I'll drop that in the chat. And I do not have the best Greek pronunciation, so I'll just apologize in advance. Some of these are probably going to be wrong. So this is an excerpt, and I will read this. It's a little bit lengthy, but I think it sets the stage for a lot of the way these rivers work and kind of flow together. So the streams are many and great and of all sorts, but among the many are 4 streams, the greatest and outermost, which is called Oceanos or Oceanus, which flows round in a circle, and opposite this, flowing in the opposite direction, is Acheron. And this flows through the various desert places, and passing under the earth comes to Acrusion, which is a lake. To this lake the souls of most of the dead go, and after remaining there in the appointed time, which is for some longer and for others shorter, are sent back to be born again into living beings. The 3rd river flows out between these 2, and near the place whence it issues it falls into a vast region. burning with a great fire, and it makes a lake larger than our Mediterranean Sea, boiling with water and mud. Thence it flows in a circle, turbid and muddy, and comes in its winding course, among other places, to the edge of the Acherusian Lake, but it does not mingle with its water. Then, after winding about many times underground, it flows into Tartaros at a lower level. This is the river which is called uh, Pyphlegion. I'll put that in the chat too. Pyrophlegion. And the streams of lava which spout up at various places on earth are offshoots of it. Opposite this, the fourth river issues, it is said, first into a wild and awful place, which is all of a dark blue color, like lapis lazuli. This is called the Stygian River, aka the River Styx, and the lake which it forms by flowing into the Styx. And when the river has flowed in here, it has received fearful powers into its waters. It passes under the earth, and circling round in the direction opposed to that of this is a tricky one, Pyrophlegethon, potentially. I know it's like pyro at the beginning because it's flamey. It meets its coming from the other way in the Acherusian Lake, and the water of this river also mingles with no other water, but this also passes round in a circle and falls into Tartaros opposite Pyrophlegethon. Sorry, I'm butchering this one. And the name of the river, as the poets say, is Kykotos. Such is the nature of these things. Now when the dead have come to the place where each is led by his genius or his demon, by Plato's equivalent of Hermes' Guide of the Dead. First they are judged and sentenced by the judges of the dead, and then they have lived well, and if they have lived well or piously or not. And those who are found to have lived neither well nor ill go to Acheron, and, embarking upon vessels provided for them, the equivalent of Charon's skiff, arrive in them at the lake. There they dwell and are purified by the equivalent of the Erinyes, and if they have done any wrong, they are absolved by paying the penalty for their wrongdoings, and for their good deeds they receive rewards, each according to his merits. Those who are curable but are found to have committed great sin, who have, for example, in a moment of passion, done some act of violence against father or mother, and have lived in repentance in the rest of their lives, or who have slain some other person under similar conditions, these needs must be thrown into Tartaros, and when they have been there a year, the wave casts them out. The homicides by the way of Kokidos, and those who have outraged their parents by way of, here it is again, the PYR word, Pyrophlegethon, and when they have been brought to the current of the Acherusian Lake, they shout and cry out, calling to those whom they have slain or outraged, begging and beseeching them to be gracious and to let them come out into the lake. And if they prevail, they come out and cease from their ills. But if not, they are borne away again to Tartaros, and thence back into the rivers. And this goes on until they prevail upon those whom they have wronged, for this is the penalty imposed upon them by the judges. All right, so I apologize for butchering that. It is not an easy text to read. I just would love to hear like any thoughts about that. Were there any things that maybe came to mind as you heard about this from either your previous knowledge or things that you've or just that stood out to you? Just any thoughts you have on that text. And Angie, I look them up too, but if that retains in my brain, I don't know. I think some of them will, but yeah, I'm not using a lot of these words regularly, and so I have looked them up, some of them many times, but it doesn't necessarily stick. Yeah, none of it's easy to pronounce. It was probably not written in English, right? Through the years. So when I read through this text, some of the things that really kind of stand out to me is the part about the lapis lazuli. I think that's really cool that it brings the color of that stone into this. I didn't actually know that that was talked about until I recently looked this up. I had seen some of these texts from Plato like many, many years ago, but it was really nice being able to, um, just see that kind of come together. And also just the way things are kind of like the punishments going through with the judges. I think that's super interesting, where you kind of have this chance to like get out of that and then be you either improve or not, right? So you have this how am I trying to say this, you have the judges determining like what your fate is, and then even with that fate you're still able to kind of absolve your wrongdoing and come back out, or to continue to go through that fiery river like over and over again. So I think that's really cool. And then also just the like the streams and rivers all connecting into the ocean, which, we know this from just kind of basic science, but it's really cool to think about that through there. Story, I will definitely take you up on that. I would love to just have a phone call or something and you can help me with the pronunciations. I think that would be super awesome. Maybe I'll do that for any future live I have with Greek stuff. That is so cool. And then actually another part that really stood out to me from this text was the Acheron River going through various desert places and flowing backwards. So that really made me think of the Nile as well. Hi, Misty, welcome. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that text? And again, this is from the Plato's book, Phaedo, Phaedo. And on the replay, definitely drop those in too. Okay, so we're going to break down into each of the different rivers right now. The first one is the river Styx, Styx. And the word Styx, it literally means shuddering. And this is in reference to the mortal loathing or hatred of death. We all have this to some degree, some more than others maybe, but we're all afraid of death. We're afraid of that experience. It's something very natural for humans, for really all animals, right? It's our preservation of life. So we have this fear, this kind of like shuddering fear of death. And that is what the word means for the Styx. So kind of the essence of this river is the shuddering. And there's also a lot that has to do with unbreakable oaths and vows. And we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. So this is the principal river of the Underworld. And from most of your comments, this is the one that you were able to come up with, that you knew about. And it is a branch of the Oceanus River. It encircles the border of the Underworld 7 times. And I have also seen it mentioned as 9 times. There may be other myths out there as well, but I think the most popular these days is that it does encircle us 7 times. But you should use whatever you feel called to. And the Styx, the river Styx, it separates the land of the living and the dead. So this is the boundary of those worlds. And the shades are, so a shade in Greek mythology is like a soul or a spirit, a ghost kind of, lots of different ways to think about it. But the term I'll use in this live is shade because that is what I see the most with the Greek mythology. So the shade of the dead are ferried across the river by Charon. And he collects a coin or sometimes 2 coins from each soul that is journeying on. So that's like their fare, their payment to get across the river. It is also called the Fearful Oath River. And this is because in Homer's Iliad, if a god swore falsely on this river, he would be deprived of ambrosia for a year. So the ambrosia is the food or drink of the gods, and it has the power to gift immortality to anyone who consumes it. And then after that year, they would also be banished from the company of all other gods for 9 years. So it was a really big deal to like swear on this river. And then if you broke that, there was like very clear consequences. So you can kind of imagine, like, is this the route to maybe like swearing on a sacred text or, like the Bible or anything else? Like potentially this is maybe where it comes from. So the vows that were sworn on this river were always binding. And so this is a great way to work with this river, is to, swear a vow and something that you want to really bind to that truth. So that is one very cool way to work with this river. And any spirits who knowingly lie onto this water. So if they, you don't have to be a god or anything like that, but if you are just any spirit and you know that you're lying. Sometimes we say something untrue that maybe we didn't know it was untrue at the time. So that's different. This is somebody who is really knowingly lying into the waters. They will fall into a coma that lasts for a year. And then once they awaken, they have 9 years of punishment. And then on the 10th year, they're able to move forward. So very similar to, if a god swore falsely onto the river, they would, not really fall in a coma, but they wouldn't get their ambrosia for a year, and then they're sort of banished. And then for like a human spirit or your general spirit, you get punished for that. So similar aspect. And then in numerology, we know that 1 and 10 have some correspondence, and so 10 is kind of like the renewal of that cycle. Okay, so let's see. We have the goddess of Styx. She is the oldest daughter of Oceana and Tethe. And Tethe is the goddess of death, oblivion, justice, and honesty. So these aspects of the river really make sense when you look at who the gods align to. And it is said that Styx was among those gathering flowers with Persephone just before her abduction. So that's kind of an interesting myth if you know about those mythologies. And I've done a live on Persephone and on Hades, where I do go into that myth quite a bit. So knowing that, the time when Persephone was abducted is when she goes into the underworld, this makes a lot of sense that this river also is what takes all of us into the underworld. And there is also an alternative myth that says that Styx and Zeus are Persephone's parents rather than Demeter and Zeus. So that's just another alternative myth out there. So Styx as a goddess, she is also the guardian of oaths. And this is really partially because she and her children were among the first spirits to support Zeus's reign. So when Zeus was coming into power of the world, so that would be Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon kind of all together, Styx and her family were among the first to support all of that. So she's a very loyal ally of Zeus. She is a solitary spirit that lives in Hades, or the underworld. So when we refer to like Hades, it's a place, but also the god. And she has her own private home, and it's apart from the other residences of Hades. And her roof of her home is said to be formed by huge rocks. And if you kind of think about this, she has like a home that is a little bit to the side, possibly along a river, a little bit away from everyone else. And she really gives me a lot of like hedge witch vibes, which I think is very cool. So a potentially very neat way to work with Styx is through hedgecraft. All right, let's see what we've got in the chat. Hi, Atina, welcome. Yes, I think the fear of death can lessen for sure, especially as we start to understand different things. Um, but yes, definitely, I think it should be there, hopefully, for most people, at least to some degree, a healthy amount. Hi, Patience, welcome. And Atina mentioned she loves Greek mythology and there's something mystical about it. I agree. I definitely love Greek mythology. It's my favorite of the different pantheons. And I think they're all mystical, but I agree. Just for me, it's the most mystical. Misty mentions that her husband has this whole live in the now because we are going to be dead soon philosophy lately. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to living in the present, right? I think that is a good philosophy. Hopefully, we're not all dead sooner rather than later, but eventually, we all end up there. Glad you're all liking this. And Atina asks if she's related to Hecate as well. I think so. I'm not sure of any like lineage relation. I'm not an expert with Hecate by any means, but they are all like, working in the underworld. So there's definitely that relation there for sure. And a lot of the underworld myths, there's less underworld gods and deities. And so they tend to be pretty related through their myths. And Angie has always been fascinated by this, even as a little girl. I love that. Yeah, it is super fascinating. And Kimberly did not know that Hades was also a place. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And some say that none of us actually know what Hades' real name is. That is part of his myth as well, is that potentially he will reveal his name to you, but that Hades is not his real name. All right. And Story mentioned who, but I'm not sure. Are you talking about Hades or Styx here? Okay, I'm going to move on and I'll come back to the comments. So the next river that we're going to talk about is the river Acheron. So this is referred to as woe, misery, and pain. Some texts refer to Acheron as the principal river rather than Styx. And so I think these texts are the ones that typically say there's only 4 rivers. So maybe Styx was potentially added later, or maybe encompasses some others in some mythology. But I don't have any preference on that myself. I don't really know, but that's just kind of a guess that I have. And in those different texts, Charon ferries the souls from the upper world to the lower worlds on this river. So very similar aspects to the Styx River. So one thing that's really interesting is in like the quote unquote real world, the earth we live on right now in this present timeline. There are several rivers that have the name Acheron. One of them is in northern Greece in Thessaloniki, and it flows into very deep gorges. This is the actual river, and it occasionally even disappears underground, which is very interesting because it fits a lot of the description that we talked about from Plato's description. And then it merges into the Ionian Sea. So potentially this is the real river. There are also some other rivers that I didn't put in here, but some other rivers that have the same name throughout the world. And it is said that there's other lakes and swamps that connect very deeply to this river too, and that potentially in those swampy areas where there's these deep roots and things like that, it could be another way to connect into the underworld. So some of these are located in various spots. So I have a few of those listed. There's Hermione in Argolis, Heraclea in Bithynia, Cumae and the Cape Misenum, Misenum in Campania, and also in Egypt near Memphis. So I will drop those in the chat just so you have them the spellings, but you can look up these if those interest you at all. But these are the various like swamps and lakes and things that are connected into this river. And Story was saying, who is related to Hecate? That was a question that Atina asked, if Styx was related to Hecate. And Patience mentioned, are the upper and lower levels similar to the concept of heaven and hell? That's a great question. I think that's really up to each person to decide. So my personal take is that there's no such thing as like heaven and hell. And those concepts to me, I think are fabricated. That's my personal take, and you don't have to believe that or think that. I in no way want to influence anybody. But I think that in the Greek mythology, the upper and lower levels are more about the upper being like where we currently are, and then the lower levels being the underworld. That's my personal understanding of this. And if anybody has other thoughts, like definitely please put those in the comments. I think this is really cool, and there's a lot of different concepts on this stuff and a lot of different beliefs, and there's really no like right or wrong. So I think if you have other information, it's really valuable for others looking to learn about this stuff. Okay, so the god Acheron, he is the husband of an underworld nymph who was named either Orphne or Gorgia. And he is also the father of Ascalaphus. I don't think I even know who that is, so I'm gonna double check really quick. I should have put that in my notes. So Ascalaphus is a mythological character, and I'm seeing pictures of an owl, but I'm trying to like find him really quickly here. Okay, so he's a custodian in Hades' orchard in the underworld. So he is part of the Persephone myth as well. So he told the other gods that Persephone had eaten the pomegranate seeds in the underworld. So he saw that she ate those or knew about it somehow, and then he ended up telling the other gods when they were looking to take her out. So he was integral to that, and that's how he Demeter was very upset about this, and so she transformed him into an eagle or an owl, and that's why I kept seeing owl pictures when I searched his name really quick. And he's said to be an omen for mankind. Okay, so Acheron has also been a son of Helios and Gaia, or Helios and Demeter. So those are, sometimes there's just different myths out there. So it's another one of them. And that he was changed into the river bearing the name for the lower world. And he also was working with the Titans during their contest with Zeus. And so his waters there helped the Titans with their contest. Sorry, the notes are not making 100% sense there, but that's, I think, what I was trying to say. And then Acheron is also used in a general sense to designate the whole of the lower world. So sometimes just like referring to the lower world would be called Acheron. So Patience, that might kind of align a little bit to what you were asking too. Another thing to think about in other parts of the world is that the Etruscans, which are like an ancient group in Italy, they also worshipped Acheron. And Circe, when she addressed Odysseus, this is a quote out of that text. It says, "Beach the vessel beside the deep eddying Oceanus and pass on foot to the dank domains of Hades. At the entrance there, the stream of Acheron is joined by the waters of," Ooh, the hard one. I gotta see how I can pronounce this. Pyriphlegethon. Pyriphlegethon. I think that's right. Pyriphlegethon. And a branch of sticks. The Cocytos, and there's a rock where the two loud rivers meet. So that is an excerpt out of the Odyssey, I believe, where Circe was addressing Odysseus. And it is said that he has an oracle of the dead in the river banks at Thespropada as well. So that's Acheron, that he would have an oracle for the dead that you could access on the banks in Thespropada. Okay, so let me check the chat. So Story says that they're not related. That was for Hecate and for Styx. Thank you. And yes, Story is definitely an expert in this, so definitely leverage her for all of her Greek mythology needs. I'm glad that you're here and helping support this live too. Hi, Tammy. Welcome. I love Greek mythology too. And it is interesting, Tammy, that the Greek and Roman mythology is taught, but not others. I feel like a lot of our culture kind of stems from Roman and Greek mythology, or not mythology, but just the times. The Romans did take over quite a bit, so that might be why. And Story, thank you. I'm glad you love my lives. I appreciate that. All right, so the next river is the river Cocytos, or Cocytos, and this means wailing or lamentation. So this is when, if a dead person is not given the proper burial rites, so maybe they're missing a coin or they were dishonored in some way, then the shades are destined to just wander along the banks of this river forever. And they're forever restless and unable to settle into a peaceful afterlife. So they're wailing, they're lamenting, they're super unhappy, just kind of wandering along these banks. And the river definitely matches that energy. So it's known to be ice cold, and it has shores of really, the shores are very cold. So there's frigid, icy winds that are blowing, and even spots of the river are frozen over with ice. So the waters are said to be filled with cries of despair. So all of these like wailing cries just enter, just inside of the water. So this also encircles the underworld. And the god here, he is one of the Potamoi river gods. And there's 3,000 of those, just like there's the 3,000 Oceanus goddesses. So they're all sons and daughters of the Titans. So there's many of them, but this is one of those 3,000 that oversees and works with this river. And then also Minth, which you may recognize her name from Hades mythology. She was with Hades, a relationship before Persephone, and she comes from this river and descends from the god Kikotos. So pretty interesting to have that too, and kind of her mythology of being turned into a mint plant out of spite, probably aligns somewhat to the whaling aspect. And then something that I kind of put together on my own, I think, maybe I've seen it, but I don't recall seeing it anywhere, is if you think about the mint plant, peppermint and things like that, it's actually it has a very cold feeling. So I think that the associations of the mint really tie in very well to this river because it has that icy feel. All right, see you later, Angie. Definitely catch you on the replay. Okay, so the next river is the river Leth or Leith. And this is about oblivion and forgetting. So just really forgetting everything, wiping your mind. and this is named after the goddess Lethe, and it's Lethe. She is the goddess of forgetfulness. She's the daughter of Iris, Eris, and she is the goddess of strife and discord. So she's a pretty, I guess, violent, maybe would be the word coming to mind, goddess of Iris. And the shades come here to drink the waters and forget about their former lives. So they come into the underworld, and there's different lines of thought, but essentially they had to drink out of this, and that's how they forget everything from their past life. It causes amnesia, so they're known for being waters of amnesia as well. And the shades eventually are born again, but this lets them kind of forget, everything from their previous lives. The shades are required to sip this water, and it is also said that they have a very seductive quality. So it's something that they really want. They're not like, oh, I don't want that water. It's very seducing. So they go over, they want it. It's probably the best water they've ever had. They're probably really thirsty. So it has this very seductive quality, and then they forget everything that they're mourning from their last life. Through the mythology, Maudalia was using the water from this river to sedate the dragon that guarded the golden fleece that allowed Jason to steal the golden fleece. So that's another myth where this water is here. So it used the same energy, right, of forgetfulness, sedation, and having that kind of seductive aspect on the dragon. So Lethe is the goddess of oblivion, and you can actually invoke her to forget what is too painful to bear. And she can also sever all the bonds lingering from past lives. So if you're trying to do any unbinding, she could be a really great goddess for this, especially if that goes through past lives. And it's often said that, if you have that power, you also have the opposite power for the antidote. So if you're looking to reawaken past memories or reverse loss of memory, then you can also work with her to try to bring that memory back. So she's actually a very ancient goddess. She is the sister of Thanatos, and she's said to also be the mother of the charities. Those are a different group of beings, mythical beings and deities that come through. So it's possible that she actually ruled the whole afterlife realm before the ascension of Hades and the Olympian spirits. So within Greek mythology, things have changed over time. So it wasn't always the realm of Hades, right? Hades, there's mythology before that with the primordial gods, when Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon came about. So even before that, Lethe is known to being around, and she potentially ruled the whole realm before that. So very interesting information there. And she does have a sacred tree, and that is the white cypress. So if you want to work with her, I would recommend working with the white cypress. All right. Let me check the comments again. Patients mentioned, yes, it is a mint plant, so that is the association with mint, and they are very invasive, yeah, and they like swampy kind of space and water too. And Kimberly said that she saw that river in a show, and she didn't know it was a connection to the Forgetful River. Yeah, so really cool. I'd love to know actually what show that is, if you remember. Sorry, my cat she's got something to add. And Tammy mentioned that forgetting is also a rebirth of the mind. I love that. That is a really beautiful way to say that. That's very cool. And Patience really likes the term seductive water. I think that is a cool term too. And blue cypress. Yes, those are very cool trees. I have some cypress in my yard too. I don't know what variety, if they're blue or white. They just look green, so something I don't know what type they are, but the white cypress I'm not sure if I've seen those either, but be cool to look into. All right, so now we have the really hard to pronounce one. And I think the one in Plato's text is maybe spelled more accurately because this was maybe the more modern version, which is Phlegethon, which is like 50% of the letters before, so a lot easier to try to pronounce. And this one is being referred nowadays as the river Phlegethon. And this travels directly to the depths of the underworld. It passes through various lands that are filled with flames of funeral pyres, and it eventually leads into the abyss of Tartaros, where the worst of souls go. So this is potentially where some of the, hell associations come from. It's a place for punishment for violent offenders and for the most wicked of people. Socrates described this river as erupting with boiling jets of lava and streams of fire before eventually disappearing into an abyss. So Tartaros is the place, and then this river leads straight to Tartaros. And Tartaros is also a god as well, of course, just like most of these others, like Hades and Styx and everything too. And there are some myths and texts that say that this river is actually made of boiling blood, which I think is a pretty cool way to look at it, and just kind of makes it all the more sinister. Just a red river with all these flames and lava jets and things like that. And it is also said that this water may have special healing powers for those that are truly remorseful for their wrongdoing. So what that is, I do not know, but I think is very cool to ponder and to think about if you're somebody who is having to go into this abyss of Tartaros. How can you work with these waters maybe to heal for someone who's like really truly remorseful for their wrongdoing? So I think that is a cool take. If you have any thoughts, definitely add that into the chat. So Phlegethon is another Potamai river god. So just like the last river of, or 2 rivers ago, Kikotos is another one of those gods, one of those 3,000. And this river is associated with fire. I believe all the rest are associated with water, but this one, is associated with fire. It's got fire in it, so no surprise. And I pulled this text into my notes. I think this is Plato again, but I forgot to put the quote where it came from, but I'll read it. And it says, "More dreadful things have I, Theseus, seen in the underworld, which Phlegethon bids imprisoned sinners suffer, compassing them about this stream of fire. What punishment waits for me, and what place I know." So that is the river Phlegethon. So we've now talked about those 5 different rivers. And if you have any inclination to any of those rivers, I would love to hear about it. If any of them really stand out to you for whatever reason, definitely put that in the chat. Okay, let me see what I've got in here. Patience, yeah, she is very vocal. She likes to let me know if she wants something. And Misty has a lemon cypress. That sounds really nice. And Story says the white cypress is a symbol of mourning in an everlasting life. So if you dream of one, you pay attention to your surroundings, and it could be a message from Aphrodite. Ooh, that's really beautiful. I love that. I wonder if the white cypress, is it like a real plant, or is it more of like a mythological plant? And I actually really love that this is connected to Aphrodite, because I have been thinking about getting an Aphrodite statue for my, for my yard. And I was going to put it right by the cypress trees. So that I am taking that as a sign to do it. And to put it right there. So Tammy mentioned seductive water could maybe feed the siren or mermaid lore from where they call to people in ships and often lead to death and destruction. I think you are spot on with that. I got like chills reading your comment. I think that is an amazing association. Definitely can see that. Hi, Carol, welcome. And Misty says that the white cypress are native to the East Coast from Maine to Georgia. Oh, that's interesting. Wow, I would not have guessed that it would be like a native to North America. Very cool that they're real. Okay, I might get one. That sounds really neat. I don't know if it'll grow here, but I'm gonna look into it. All right, so we've gone through the rivers, and then there's one more body of water that I want to talk about. There's lots of lakes and things too, but this is kind of just the last water aspect. And this is the pool of Mnemosyne, which is Mnemosyne. And she is the goddess of memory who keeps a pool of water near the halls of Hades. And it is said that there's inscriptions on gold leaves that were found inside the tomb of a dead woman. This is here on Earth that they've uncovered. And this was in Thessaly from 400 BC. And it cautioned, sorry, my voice is struggling. She's cautioning the newly dead to keep their memories. So we learned all about the river where you go and you drink and you lose all of your memories. But she's cautioning the newly dead to keep their memories by avoiding to drink from the Leith River and instead to drink from the pool of Mnemosyne. So that is very interesting. Why would she be telling us not to do that? So there is a babbling stream that flows from the pool of Mnemosyne through the underworld. So there's this little stream, kind of like a babbling brook. And it is said it's very difficult to get to this pool and that only some shades can access it. So there's a lot of different thought on this. And it is said that some mystery cults claim that the initiates are able to access this pool. And one of those mystery cults is the cult of Demeter and Persephone, and it is said that this was maybe part of the Eleusinian mysteries, that they became initiated and that they then had access to this pool and this water. Mnemosyne is also, so a little bit about her as a goddess. So she is the daughter of Gaia and Uranus. She also slept with Zeus for 9 nights, and that was in order to conceive the 9 muses. So there's a lot going on with this goddess. She really is one to look into, I think. Maybe I'll do a live on her in the future. But she has just a lot to do with humanity and, everything going on with the muses. She birthed them. And then some myths also say that she and Achelous are the parents of the sirens. So that was really interesting. Was it Tammy, I think, mentioning the sirens and the mermaid lore? Yeah, Tammy. And definitely, kind of interesting how that pulls into the pool of Mnemosyne as well. And before Mnemosyne existed, memories did not exist, and you could not access any past life memories. So I think you would maybe have memories of like what you did yesterday or in your current life, but you would never have had any memories of past lives. So a lot of us tap into that. I know I've talked to many people in this group and other people in life that feel that they can access things from past lives and sometimes have memories of past lives. So potentially you have worked with this pool to have access to that. And you can invoke this goddess to help preserve your memories and also tap into the Akashic record or other past life systems. One thing that I kind of personally believe is that, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people going through witchcraft or other traditions, there's so many different things you can be initiated into, or even self initiations. And a lot of witches really kind of have this natural tendency with the underworld and past lives. And um, I don't think there's any coincidence that this pool we probably have worked with, or maybe we'll be working with after this life. So um, definitely something to look into if you have not heard of this. So those are all of the waters. We talked about the 5 rivers and then this pool of Mnemosyne. Let me check the chat. Yes, Aphrodite is very cool. Oops, it scrolled up on me. And Patience is asking, do you know what corresponds with blue cypress? She thought they were for death and mourning. And white cypress, yes, Carol, it is a plant. It's a real plant, we have learned. So maybe we'll see. There's probably are, I would guess, that there probably are some different correspondences within the colors of the cypress. I am not an expert on the cypress plants, but I have heard that they have that underworld connection as well. And Patience is interested in the Akashic records. Yeah, and I don't think the Akashic, maybe it is, but I don't think the Akashic records are with the Greek system. I think they are more with the potentially like Hindu system. I'm gonna have to look that up because I just don't remember, or maybe it's just like a modern New Age thing. I think there is a goddess. It could be based off of Mnemosyne, but I forget where the Akashic record came from and sort of all that. That could be another cool live too, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's Greek. And then Story mentioned that blue cypress is for tranquility and longevity and a connection between life and death. Oh, that's beautiful. Very cool. Yeah, and Patience mentioned that the Akashic part makes sense with Hinduism. Yeah, I think it is. And Kimberly mentions that the river of memory she wants to look more into, especially since she wants to learn more about past lives. I definitely think that is something to look into for sure. Very cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the fields. So once the shades have crossed over the river, they are greeted by Cerberus, who is a monstrous canine with 3 heads and a serpent's tail. I think a lot of us are familiar with Cerberus. Harry Potter, of course, has him. And the dog guards the gates of the realms for the dead. And it is his duty that it ensures that the shades go through the proper gates and that none leave. It's also interesting with the Egyptian mythology where we have Anubis, who is a dog-like deity as well, who weighs your heart and decides, where you go in the afterlife too. So a lot of similarities there. And I don't know the names, but I know that a lot of, like in the Chinese mythologies, the really old ones, they have like dog figures kind of guarding the underworld aspects they have out there too. All right, so he makes sure that you go through the correct gates and that no one leaves. So there are judges that help you with this, that determine, which gates you go to. So we talked about that a little bit with Plato's text. And the judges are Icos, Rhadamanthus, and Minos. And they meet with the newly arrived shades and they assign them to dwell in their various aspects of the underworld. So there are 4 regions. And we're going to talk a little bit more about 4, but those main 4 are the Asphodel Fields, the Elysian Fields, the Fortunate Isles, or the Isles of the Blessed, that's the same thing, or Tartaros. So those are the 4 areas that you essentially would be assigned. So the first one is called Asphodel Fields. It's Asphodel, also called Asphodel Meadows. And this is where like 99% of everyone goes. This is where almost everyone goes. It's for mortals who are neither particularly good or particularly bad. So you go here and you drink from those waters and you erase your memories. You kind of hang out here until you are ready to reincarnate. So they talk about the Asphodel Meadows as being like a way station or like a train station, an airport lounge, whatever you want to think about. You're just kind of hanging out here and you rest. And Hades is often seen as, or like one of his titles is like the host of many. They talk a lot about him being a host. And so, these meadows or fields are a place where, you would really rest and be given shelter and kind of renew. So you want to think about it kind of that way. It's not where in sort of like the modern world of, where Christianity is very prevalent, where we have this like afterlife where you go forever. Like it's a very different concept with the Greeks. And here you would drink from the waters of Lethe, and then you have no past life memory and you go back into your new body. So it's really like a place of healing, processing, and renewing so that you can go on to your next life. So, you have these kind of visions of like, or interpretations of having them being like a train station where you like sit and rest. But it's also a lot of times said that they just kind of wander aimlessly. So maybe you're just walking around and you think about those train stations and things like, yeah, you can sit, but you're also like walking and you're moving in destination. I have done some different like rituals which are really powerful where you sort of enact that. You go in kind of a darkened room and you're just walking around like you're a shade in the underworld, just really in a meditative trance state. It's a very powerful ritual and definitely kind of triggers almost like a past life memory of being there for me and many other people going through those rituals. So the name asphodel comes from the asphodel flower, and that's a real flower. It's kind of a pale and ghostly looking flower that fits the shadowy atmosphere of the underworld. And some believe that it has like a much more ghostly appearance in the underworld than we would see here on Earth. Like maybe it's illuminated or just kind of like translucent or something along those lines. Maybe like kind of misty, I'm not sure. But definitely has this like ghostly feel that a lot of people talk about in the underworld. And then others will say that it's, just a typical looking daffodil or a narcissus flower. So that's kind of what the fields look like. A lot of times it's described kind of as like a misty, barren type of lands, like not really like a spring-filled flower type of place. But sort of, a little dark and dreary, misty, but not like scary, not negative, not overly positive either, but just a place where you can go and renew and rest and kind of recover to move on to your next life. So it's really the goal of it is being a place of recovery and solace. All right, let me check the comments. Patients mentioned that ancestor work works well with this, and I absolutely agree. I think working with ancestors, spirits, ghosts, really anybody like passing through, like this is a really great way to work with all of this. And Story mentioned that she can share info about past life regression. That's what you tap into. I think that would be amazing to share and definitely very cool with the past life regressions. Carol says this is all new to her, and that is awesome. I love sharing this info. And Patience, I think you're referring to Cerberus, that he's a cute puppy. Yeah, I think it maybe depends on how you were, right? Is he cute or is he going to bite your head off? I don't know. Are you listening or not? Um, and yeah, I think it is really interesting with the lapis lazuli too, Carol. Um, and I'm glad that you're working with Persephone. Definitely, any of the deities and goddesses and gods that connect with the underworld. Hades and Persephone are the king and queen, and then other really major figures like Hecate, even Hermes, are really great ones to uh, work with the underworld. Tammy mentions if the river of memory and the tree of knowledge are related. Yes, I think that they are. I think they're different, but that there's definitely a relation there. I think the tree of knowledge tends to be more on the Celtic side, and then also like the Germanic Norse too, right? Very similar. Um, and also a lot with like Jewish mysticism with the tree there too. Kimberly mentions the middle waiting part is also considered a part of the underworld. Yes, so they would be those fields that kind of is the majority of the underworld. So you go in, you drink the water when you're ready to forget, and then you hang out in those fields until you're ready to reincarnate. So that's kind of the majority of the underworld, maybe like 90% or so would be the asphodel fields. Um, and Tammy mentioned that the healing water could correlate being washed in blood for healing, forgiveness, and rebirth. Yeah, I could definitely see that. And if you think about like birth, right, it's very bloody. And yeah, lots of aspects of that you could think about for sure. Misty is interested in past lives and wants to look into it more, which I think is very awesome. And Carol mentioned that in Scotland, ambrosia, there's ambrosia creamed rice pudding. So that's pretty cool. I love that. Okay. So the Eleusinian fields, these are for mortals who lived virtuous lives or for those who were initiated into those mystery cults. So that's another one of those appeal for those big mystery cults like the Eleusinian mysteries. No surprise, the name, the etymology of those words is right there. The Eleusinian fields and the Eleusinian mysteries, they go hand in hand for a reason. And these fields are they're like the more springtime type of feel, right? We have sunny and pleasant weather. There's abundant food and drink and conversation. So whereas I think the conversation aspect is really interesting, where the asphodel fields, people are kind of wandering more in silence, where the Eleusinian fields, they're conversing more with others. And this is where it is said that you can access the Nemesine pools, where you can recall the lessons and teachings of previous lives. So that's where they say the fields are, or the fields have the pools and that brook through it. So not everybody gets to access the Elysian fields. So it's like you die, you go to the gates, you're pushed into the one that you know, and then there's all these rivers and things, right? You've journeyed through the river, and then you have to drink from something at some point, and if you don't have, you only have what you have at those areas. That's kind of how I look at it personally. That's how I connect the dots here. And maybe in the Eleusinian fields, you can decide if you want to drink from the pool of Nemesine, or if you want to erase everything and start over. That could potentially be a choice that you make. So within this area where you're working with those pools, if you wanted to drink that, it would be to recall lessons and teachings in previous lives. So with some mystery cults and various traditions and things, they might refer to something called the Great Work. And this is you really continuing in your reincarnated life to continue building on the magic and the work that you're set out to do. And so if you're doing that, you actually need to be able to access the knowledge that you have had in previous lives and build off of that in some cult tradition. So that I'm part of the essentially like Golden Dawn tradition, and that's something that is taught there. But there's a lot of other different types of traditions and groups and things that believe this. And of course, it's said that the Eleusinian mysteries have a lot of the same type of thing. And plenty of others too. It's not unique to only that. And so it said that if you have been assigned to the Eleusinian fields for 3 consecutive lifetimes, so it has to be back to back, all 3 in a row, that you can choose to escape the cycle of life and death by retiring to the Isles of the Blessed, or also known as the Fortunate Isles. So that you'd have to make it here 3 times in a row. And you can, at that point, decide if you want to go to the Fortunate Isles or you want to keep reincarnating with memory, or maybe you want to reincarnate and start completely over. So you can kind of have all these different choices of what you want to do. And it is said that these isles are, or just kind of the fields in general, are located on the western side by the ocean, at the end of the earth, whatever that means. And in the Greek times, they say this was probably in the vicinity of where Troy is, kind of, modern times. And then the ruler of the Eleusinian varies from various authors. So some say it was Kronos. Some say it was Rhadamanthus, who was the king of Crete. And then others say, oh no, those are the only 2 that I have on there. So in Homer, they were saying that it was Ramanthanus. And then in Pindar and Hesiod, they say it is Kronos. So different people saying who rules that area, but all still part of the underworld, right? Who, even those who were ruling these areas would still fall under like Hades' domain. And so the Isles of the Blessed, those would be kind of like the isles off the shores of the Eleusinian field. So it's like on the ocean side, and then you would be able to see these islands, but you wouldn't be able to access them if you're in the Eleusinian fields. So the Isle of the Blessed, these are where the heroes go. Also those who are what they say thrice blessed virtuous. So you've gone through these 3 cycles in a row where you've made it to these Eleusinian fields, and you've made the choice to go to the Fortunate Isles. And it's kind of like the overachievers, the valedictorians, whatever. You made it to this stage, and that's kind of how they say you've like become now a god in your own right. You've become what they say the deathless ones, which is AKA some form of a god. So now you've kind of made it to that level, and you've made it to the eternal staycation. And that's kind of where you go. And they say that Cronus is the ruler of the Fortunate Isles. I think most seem to align with that. They describe it as having like lots of parks with a lot of shade, and a lot of like athletic and musical and artistic pastimes. So a lot of artists and scientists and philosophers and things kind of doing their craft in that space. So those are the areas that you would go. And then there's one more area, which is Tartaros. And this is the abyss of, where everyone that is just doing you're getting sent here for not great reasons, right? And the abyss of Tartaros actually predates the god Hades, and it's kind of its distinct area away from the rest of the underworld. So there's a little bit of um, discord on, is this part of Hades or is this separate from Hades in the underworld? Does Hades actually rule over this or not? Or is it Tartaros? I don't know. I don't really want to go personally. So, um, yeah, that's a different thought on that. But basically, Tartaros as a god, he's a primordial god, and he, Nyx, and Erebos existed before even Kronos and all of them. So um, this has been around for a really long time. It's described as an infinite chasm or like a yawning mouth. And it is said that this is where the depths of the cosmos were born. So Tartaros, this flaming area where, you know, the spark of everything was born. So very cool to think about that, and also interesting that that is where they send, you know, those people or shades or beings or whatever into this abyss through the fiery river to get there. So I think that is pretty interesting. All right, so let me check the chat. Wow, I am tongue twisted. I've been talking for a while. Sorry, it's getting long. Okay. And Patience wants the recipe, and I think that was the ambrosia recipe. That would be very cool to share. I feel like that would be a really cool live, Carol. And Carol mentioned that the coins of the river remind her of crossing over. Yeah, I agree. And I actually am wondering, I think maybe you might be watching the beginning of the live while I'm in the end of the live, but I'm not sure. So I feel like your stuff's aligning to things from earlier. So Patience mentioned that the Eleusinian fields are the only things that she's heard of, and I think that's probably true for a lot of people. You know, that's the one that definitely is kind of talked about a lot in the various myths. You know, kind of trying to aim for the Eleusinian fields. And Carol is drawn to Norse mythology, and but is also definitely drawn to the Greek side with Persephone. And I think that it's definitely cool to be drawn to different pantheons and different mythology groups. I used to be very drawn to the Celtic mythology. I think it's shifted over the years, but I still really love a lot of the Celtic mythology too. All right. Okay, so there's a couple more places to talk about. So one is there's the halls of Hades and the house of Hades. So a little confusion can be seen on that a lot. So the halls of Hades is more generic, and that's kind of like all of the underworld. It's where all of the dead reside, and the halls are not really like a specific place from what I can find. It's really just sort of like all of the underworld is essentially these halls. And so it can be kind of said that, you know, as you're walking through these rivers and halls and train station looking places or whatever, you're just kind of wandering through all of these. Maybe it's somewhat of a labyrinth, a bit of the halls of Hades. It's kind of just the generic all of the underworld. And I really like that idea of it being a labyrinth. And we think about like the cypress trees and all of that, you know, they kind of have a hedgy appearance. And so you can kind of think of that maybe as you know, wandering through these garden hedges and labyrinths and things too. So what is the house of Hades? The house of Hades is his personal estate. So that's the difference between the house and the halls. That is where Hades lives. And it's, oops, I think this is supposed to be in a different part of my notes. I have on here, it's the realm of death, but it's a necromantion oracle house. And this is actually back to the Acheron River. So I mentioned something about an oracle house. And so I just putting this in, sorry, it somehow got put in the wrong part of my notes. But this, the Acheron River does have an oracle house, which is an interesting piece there for that. So, and I see now how it got put in my notes here because now I'm talking about a different thing with the House of Hades. So there is a site in real life on the earth right now that was a different type of oracle house. So these two notes are right here. And this one was called the Necromaniton. And I will put that in the comments as well. So this is a like a house for necromancy, bringing the dead, and also getting oracle visions and things too. And this was where the Akron and the Cocytus rivers joined. And it matches a lot of the descriptions that align to the Odysseus that the descriptions that Circe gave Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey. So it does match that. And I think we talked about that earlier. Had an example of that script before. So that site was a shrine that is dedicated to both Hades and Persephone. You can look it up online. You can kind of see these tunnels and things that they have discovered, which is super cool. They have seen that there was like a priest that lived on the site, or various priests and priestesses that lived on the site, and they also had room for travelers coming through. Those travelers were pilgrims that stayed for different rituals of purification, connecting with the dead, and they have found that they would have had a strict diet of lupine seeds and fava beans that were said to induce visions. And then archaeologists have also unearthed large quantities of hashish there too that were decaying, so they're able to kind of past date it. So, you know, they were smoking a lot of hashish at that site as well. So the pilgrims would descend into these labyrinth passageways. So it sounds very much like the descriptions of, you know, the House of Hades, the halls of Hades that we had, right? This is kind of the site of potentially the house or something that was built to be like the house. And then you would go through these halls that they built underground. They've actually found, you know, there. You can find these halls or pictures of these halls online. So you can go and see what that looks like. I definitely recommend looking that up. And they would descend into these labyrinths, and they would actually be able to pass through an iron door where they were supposedly able to reach a portal to have conversations with the dead. So there's a lot of mythology that aligns to this, and those remains are very much there. The Romans, as they do, destroyed this, and they destroyed that in 167 BCE. And all the people, of course, as the Romans also love to do, and they were all enslaved. So they sold off the 15,000 people that lived there as slaves. Gotta love it. And then it was just all abandoned for about 2,000 years. Then, of course, we have the Catholics, the Christians coming in to just build over the site. So that's what they did. They built a monastery of St. John the Baptist on the site. You know, a lot of sacred sites just are repurposed through the years over and over and over. And who knows what was there even before the House of Hades, right? But that's the history of this. And they started in 1958 doing archaeological excavation, and they still continue to do that today. So definitely a very cool thing in real life that I would love to visit one day and go and see this and try to do different workings and things as close as possible that I can to it. I'm sure they have a lot of rules, but definitely, you know, seems like a really powerful place to go. All right, so those are all the rivers and places in here. So I'm gonna check the comments, and I don't see any comments coming in, and I kind of feel like maybe it's stuck for whatever reason. So if I can't see your comments. I apologize. Maybe they'll all come in again because it kind of seems to get stuck. But anyway, I will check comments at the end, and of course for the replay, I'll keep checking them too. So I'm gonna keep moving on. Hopefully it's still recording. And so how do we've learned all this stuff. This is really, basically an informational live, but what can we do with this? How can we make this part of our practice? So, these are all things, these are just going to be suggestions. I'm not going to go into like how to do them because I don't think that there's like a right or wrong way. Oh, thank you, Patience. Good. I'm glad it is still going. And, these are just some ideas, food for thought. Of course, the most obvious is doing like journeying to the underworld. And that's done through various liminal work. So meditation, dream work, hedge writing, astral projection, shamanic work. These are all things that are very connected to the underworld. And we're talking a lot about the Greek underworld, but, different cultures and different mythologies, they all have some type of, way of describing some of these things. And any of that will really help you kind of connect to them. And you can also work really specifically with these rivers. So each of the rivers I talked about, what they mean, what kind of god or goddess is connected to them, and just what the essence and the meaning of each of those rivers are. And so just from that, you can connect with the energy of the river, and putting a lot of intention into any of this liminal work that you decide to do. Some of these you can actually gather water from the real place. I mean, what a beautiful thing if you have access to that. Most of us don't, but don't feel like you can't still access them in another way. And think about what water is, right? It's something that constantly is flowing and moving throughout the earth. It's never really like recreated. There's never more or less water on earth. And, it all flows forever. So that in itself is a very magical thing. And every drop of water, like this tea that I have right here and I'm drinking, it has gone through all of these rivers at some point. So, it's all magical, and you can declare anything a magical working when you put your intention into that. So if I wanted to declare that this is the, water of whatever river, then I could do that and use that within my craft. And you can too. There's the symbolic representation of making something to really represent that river. So I think it's really cool that you can, make something that you want. And I do actually have a couple of things to show you. So this bottle was gifted to me. Sorry, I can't even see my own picture, so make sure you can see it. This bottle was gifted to me by someone in an exchange, and it is supposed to represent the river Styx. I absolutely love this. I keep it on my altar. It has like the little glitter stuff in there and a lot of different correspondences with crystals and herbs, and it's very powerful. I love to work with this and meditate and just watch the waters flowing, and this one is representing the river Styx. So that's something that you can make too, or purchase from somebody that makes them, or be gifted if you get lucky like me. And having these symbolic representations are really great ways to connect with all of these rivers. Also, in the tarot, if you don't know this, the Six of Swords, make sure you can see that good. The Six of Swords is either the Styx or the Acheron River, and that's Charon journeying, the ferryman, bringing these souls to the afterlife. A lot of people know that, but also a lot of people don't. So if you don't know, now you know. And that is, when you pull this card, it is a pretty deep sign to connect to the underworld. So definitely an interesting one there. And even the images, like you can't see any of their faces, right? And they're kind of like dead bodies being carried in a way. So other ways, of course, working with ancestors, any type of spirit, shades, anyone who maybe would have passed or is in that space currently, doing divination, oracle work, getting guidance from these other realms, all really great ways to kind of just work with the underworld in general. And you can go deeper by really working with the rivers and the fields too. You can, of course, honor the underworld gods, goddesses, deities, figures, plants, all the things that are associated with the underworld. The more that you do with this stuff in your craft, the more you're going to build and nurture the relationship with the underworld. You can, just like you would do like any journeying to the underworld, you can also journey to the fields as well. You can, work with the rivers, potentially think about carrying a coin. This is a modern recreation of like a Greek coin, it has Pegasus on there. So, I think you can find these around on Amazon and such. Or you can have your own, antique coins, or you can just find coins or use whatever currency coin that you would like. So those potentially, I don't always do this, but I do try. I don't like freak out if I don't, but I do try to carry a couple coins with me if I am doing underworld meditations and things like that as well. So I think that's a cool thing to do. Very easy. You can find a couple pennies. Those work great. And working with the coin as you do that. But again, I wouldn't stress or freak out if you forget. And let's see, so you can also, if you are like striving for a different type of field or something in your life, then you would want to align your life in a way that corresponds to those fields or that tries to help you get to that aspect. And these are difficult things to achieve, right? It's many, many lifetimes for us to, you can have infinite lifetimes and potentially you've reached that field and got bored and maybe you want to go back. So there's definitely a lot of things you can think about with that and aligning your life in the way that you want. You can also work with, art, science, and philosophy. These are major aspects with the muses and, just kind of within a lot of this work, right? Trying to do things with the Greeks, like that's what they really brought forward in their life. So, for a reason that kind of goes along with the mythologies. Living the life of a hero, trying to be heroic, they automatically get granted into the Fortunate Isles. You can initiate into a mystery cult if you feel really drawn to that. So there's plenty of cults that offer initiation. I personally feel self-initiation is also very valid. So that's something that you can do. There's plenty of guides and books, and you can find one that you like and go through that process, not just like, oh, I initiate myself in this moment. Like they normally have steps and things. And I personally feel you should honor the steps if you are drawn to one of those. You can also do transitional rituals, which use rivers as crossroads, using the river as some type of initiation or another like rite of passage. I know in like a witchcraft tradition I work in a lot, it's a kind of like a tangent of Wicca. They have like a rite of passage and definitely has like an underworld theme. So I've seen that a lot with different witchcraft spaces. And you can work with oceanic or sea magic too. A lot of sea witchery really connects in with this. The waters, are said to flow out from the ocean or into the ocean anyway. And rivers, of course, would make probably the most sense. And you can also, invoke the gods, goddesses, deities, mythical creatures, and things as well. It's a little more advanced, but if you feel like you want to be invoking those, go for it. So those are different ways to work with all of this. So that is the end of my information, and I'm going to check the comments and then wrap up. So thank you all so much for being here. Okay, and Misty mentioned that she's studied Celtic the most, but that this is striking an interest for her. I love that. I'm definitely glad you're interested in this. And there is a lot of correspondence with the other world, the way that the Celtics describe it, and the mists of Avalon. I mean, I think a lot of this has a lot of root similarities, which are very cool. And Tammy, I'm so glad that you're loving all this information. You're very welcome. Story mentioned that phlegathon is associated with intense purification and it can be used to burn away karmic debts. I love that. That makes so much sense to me. And yeah, that kind of like purity, that fiery healing, from that makes a lot of sense. Like kind of that incineration aspect. And then Leth, Story has also worked with Leth to touch into past life regressions. Very cool. And let's see what else I've got here. And Story mentioned that cocytus. I hope I'm pronouncing one of those correctly, one version of what I'm saying, is where you want to release pent up lamentations. That makes a lot of sense too. Misty asked Story if she has any book recommendations. I would love that as well. For this live, I did just a lot of research on the internet. There's a few different, I couldn't find them in my browser history, but there's a few different like Greek mythology websites that go into a lot of depth, and they're kind of like they're the first ones that came up for me, so you know how the algorithm is. Maybe they'll be the first ones for you, but they definitely seemed very well researched and sorted, so I pulled a lot of information from that. I did pull some of it from this book as well. So this doesn't have a lot, but it has like kind of just some intro to some of those areas and some ways to work with it. It's more focused on Hades as a deity, but because he overrules this space, has some of it. And then I also used, I don't have it next to me, but there's the Witchcraft Encyclopedia. That it's a big old book, and it has some of the information in here. Actually, no, I didn't use that one. I used the same author, Julia Isles or Itcoles or something along those lines. She has the Encyclopedia of Spirits. She did not have all of the spirits in here, but some of them were in there. So I pulled some information from that as well. And Story has used sticks for bonding negative people. That is very interesting. I think that is a cool way to use that. I have worked with it a bit for like bonding different things that I want and things that I'm binding, like vows and such, but bonding negative people, that is a very cool way to use that. And Story, I would love it if you put together a list to post in the group. I selfishly want that list for myself, and I'm sure that others could use that too. And Story has also used Leth with the cord cutting ceremony. Yeah, she would be very powerful for that, for sure. Hi, Erica. I'm actually just wrapping up, but good to see you. And I'm so glad. Thank you all for just the nice comments, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the live. Thank you for being here. And cool, I'm glad that I got to teach a lot of new info. I feel like this information, like it's out there. It is in, a lot of the main books from back, the big popular books like the Odyssey, Plato, like all these really classical texts. But you know what? I think a lot of the modern books kind of just leave it out, to be honest. I don't know why, because I think it's important info, but I'm glad that you all enjoyed this live, and thank you for sticking with me as I try to pronounce half of these words. And definitely glad to hear, Kayla, that you're going to do some more research in this, and I highly recommend that. I think it's very, very cool mythology, and I love the system that the Greeks use and how they describe this, and really how you can, see the evidence of their myths and what they believed and things like out in modern times, right? It's really cool to see, like, okay, here's the site, like you can actually go and visit and things like that. So that's one thing I really love about the Greek mythology is seeing it in kind of the present day. All right, well, thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And for anyone on the replay or on YouTube, drop comments anytime, and I try to check it pretty regularly, like right after the video first comes out, and then, kind of periodically from there. So, bye, thank you.